Hi, it's Ollie from Cross Platform Gaming, and today I'm joined with Dan. Say hello, Dan.
Hello.
So, today is the day. Finally, a brand new installment in EA's UFC series of games has been revealed. Fans have waited for over 2 years, and UFC 4 is now firmly on our horizon. In this video, we'll bring you the reveal and we'll have a chat about what we think about what we know so far, and some of our expectations and hopes for the new game. Lastly, we'll end the show today with our predictions for the hotly anticipated first Fight Island show, UFC 251 tonight, headlined by Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal. Talking of Masvidal, let's delve into the recent leaks before we dissect the reveal. A post purporting to be from the UFC 4 cover shoot showed welterweight contender Masvidal posing for photos alongside undefeated middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. In my opinion at least, these are great picks for potential cover athletes. They are two fighters currently in their prime and at the forefront of fight fans' minds globally. Masvidal has had potentially the biggest 2019 on the roster, and Adesanya has been spearheading a stacked middleweight division for some time now. Dan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'd agree. They're both great fighters. However, I would say that they're not typically cover stars that you would find on EA games. Usually they're more globally reaching or, like the top of the game kind of sports stars. Not to take anything away from Adesanya, but, Masvidal doesn't actually have a title belt. I mean, you would have thought somebody else like Amanda Nunes, for example, would be potentially a star that they would put on the cover.
Another leak during the rounds was an image that seemed to show Adesanya with some homemade hand wraps, brawling in a cage erected in a street, akin to the backyard brawls we've seen fighters like Kimbo Slice claim their fame in. Many fans are speculating that this could potentially be the player character's early path in the new game's career mode. I, for one, welcome a fresh take like this, and I think there leaves a lot of possibilities if this is the case. Dan, would you agree with my sentiments here?
Yeah, I'd definitely agree with you if it was part of the career. Starting the same way that Kimbo Slice did, for example, one of the greats. But if it's just going to be more of a selectable stage, then I think that kind of envelops the whole game in that whole Mortal Kombat kind of feel where it's like a classic beat 'em up rather than the sport that is UFC.
So, that's some of the biggest leaks covered there, but let's bring you the reveal and we'll be back to join you straight after.
Did I have fights in the street? Yeah, but that was many years ago.
Fighting with people trying to take my head off, that was always my safe zone.
It's mixed martial arts. We are the artists.
Oh my goodness! That's the last style bender, folks.
This this isn't for everyone. Some people, they run away, and some people fight.
Baptized, somebody getting baptized. 3-piece with the soda.
Surprise, the king is back!
Sober dog with the strap on my shoulder. Good guys dressed in black, you can bet that. Ben style in space, mind and face. Face critics with kind of grace. Against all odds, I'm a dominator. Catch him with 100-hit combinations. Crazy.
There's two different artists trying to impose their will on the canvas.
He's in a really bad situation here. He might have to tap.
Do they keep fighting, digging?
To the top, you'll see.
I just
Going straight to the top, straight to the top. To the top, you'll see. Going straight to the top, straight to the top.
I'm still me at the end of the day.
You'll see.
I'm gonna do this my way or no way.
Just imagine this. It's the true crossover of combat sports. Welcome to the UFC.
So, that was the official reveal trailer. All of the leaks we just mentioned just so happen to be included in there too. It didn't give too much away at all, but it does look as if the backyard fighting aspect will be a big part of the game. Kimbo Slice was even there for a brief second, and you can't have backyard fighting without the man that made it go viral in the first place. Another new area of sorts appears to be a mystical Adesanya battleground, giving even more credence to Dan's earlier comments on the similarities with Mortal Kombat. Personally, I think more of a simulation experience is what EA should be looking for, with potentially the option of a separate, more arcadey game mode. We don't want this turning into WWE 2K20, that's for sure. Dan, do you feel vindicated by this, and what do you think now that we've seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Cave Battle Arena is very Mortal Kombat-esque. I would say that it's almost like they've got NetherRealm to design it for them. But again, I think that they're focusing on the sport rather than the gimmicks. Although I would quite like to see a bit more realism in terms of having the option to have no crowds or even Fight Island as an arena.
Visually, the game looks a lot like UFC 3, which for me isn't a major problem. However, I would have preferred to see at least a little improvement in that field. I'm not sure why this would be the case, but I'm hoping this footage shown was from the current gen and isn't indicative of what we should expect from PS5 and Xbox Series X. Dan, did you have any thoughts on the graphical quality on show today?
I would say that usually EA and their big games, they're like FIFA for example, they're very focused on realism for the players, especially when they do like the close-up shots, and it doesn't seem like there's much of an improvement from the UFC 3 game. There could be that this is limited by the console itself, so on next gen it might look a bit better, but at the moment there's only ever 2 players in the octagon, and it really shouldn't be that difficult to make it realistic. There's not a hell of a lot more going on. I've got a question for you though. Did you see at the end screen, if you pre-order the game, that you get Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury as characters, similar to what they did with Bruce Lee in UFC 3? I'm really not quite sure if they're just trying to capitalise on the success of Fury and Joshua, but what are your thoughts about them being playable characters in an MMA game when they're kind of just boxers?
For me, it's purely a promotional gesture. MMA as a whole has been picking up steam for a number of years now, but other than Conor McGregor, it's arguably still not considered mainstream. I think that it is a ploy from EA to try and pull in some casual fans and rack up the pre-orders, seeing as their pre-order bonuses. We saw similar in the last game, with Fight Night champion characters coming into it, but this takes that up to a whole new level. I think it's a tactic that will quickly lose its novelty upon the game's release. However, I see where they're doing it and I don't have a problem with it. It's just not for me, and it isn't really aimed at me either. I'd much rather try and take Sean O'Malley to the top of the bantamweight division than see 2 boxers get put to sleep at heavyweight. So, let's switch it up a bit, and for a one-off special, let's look through tonight's card for the huge UFC 251 event on Fight Island, aka Yas Island in Dubai. I've got a huge bet on tonight that could net me a cool £7,500 if all goes well. My accumulator does consist of some prelim fights, but we'll focus on tonight's main card. Starting the main show is a women's flyweight bout pitting Paige VanZant against Amanda Ribas. The women continue on to the next fight with the second meeting of strawweights Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas. Andrade won the previous scrap with a sickening slam to claim Namajunas' strawweight title. Namajunas is looking for redemption here. The first of 3 scheduled title fights takes place next, as we look to crown a bantamweight champion after Henry Cejudo's retirement definitely being in inverted commas here. Petr Yan takes on Brazilian MMA legend Jose Aldo in a potential barnstormer. The UFC Featherweight Championship is set to be decided in the night's co-main event, with champion Alexander Volkanovski looking to go 2-0 against the man that he took the title from, Max Holloway. Then our main event for the evening is one that has changed in the days leading up to the event. Our thoughts are of course with Gilbert Burns, the man originally slated for this fight who had to pull out due to falling victim to the pandemic. But on 7 days' notice, game-bred Jorge Masvidal has stepped up to take on the immovable Kamaru Usman for the UFC Welterweight Championship. To be honest, this is the fight we originally wanted, and Masvidal has been training for Usman anyway, so this one is sure to be titanic. For the first time ever for us, I think Dan and I have the same predictions for this card. However, one prediction of mine in particular is more of a hope than a solid prediction. Let's go through each fight briefly and look into who we think will have their arm raised at the end. For the first fight, I think Amanda Ribas takes this one. Paige VanZant is a project that I think the UFC really wanted to work. She's of course got the looks that they can promote and she carries herself well, but I don't think her octagon skills match up to that. Don't get me wrong, she's a good test for anyone on her day, but I think Ribas has the technical nous and will claim the victory here. Dan, what about you?
Yeah, I'm very much in line with you on this one. I think with VanZant, she's had a few lackluster fights. I don't really know too much about Ribas, mostly just going on what the odds gave me here.
Next up, I've got Rose Thug Namajunas taking this one to draw level overall with Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade is a beast and betting against her does feel a little wrong, but I really like Namajunas as a fighter and she showed that to the world with her 2 dominant wins over Ioane and Jacek. I'd love Namajunas to kick on after her original loss to Andrade, so that's why I'm backing her here. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, I'm very much in line with you on this one as well. Although she's the less experienced fighter, that 3-inch reach advantage is going to make a huge difference, and I can really see her taking this one.
In the bantamweight title spectacle, I'm plucking for Petr Yan. Again, difficult to bet against his opponent here, with Jose Aldo being a huge name in MMA. I do, unfortunately, think Aldo's time at the top has come to an end, as he's only really shown flashes of his former self since Conor McGregor put his lights out at featherweight a few years ago. Petr Yan is an exciting fighter, and I think he'll sit atop the pedestal on what is looking like one of the most formidable divisions in the UFC at the minute. Dan, what are you going for here?
Yeah, I've also gone for Yan here too. I saw him in his last fight and he was an absolute beast. He's also, I think, 14-1, so I think he's just hungrier for the title.
The featherweight title is being decided next, and I've gone for Alexander Volkanovski to retain his strap. Max Holloway is another fighter creeping up to that legendary status, and it was a close fight last time when Volkanovski took the decision, but I do think Alexander the Great may have Holloway's number, and a new challenger may have to step forward after this. Dan, would you agree with me on this one again?
Yeah, indeed. I think it's going to be another close one. I do think it's going to go the same way as it did before, with Volkanovski taking the win, but again I think it's going to go to a decision, just because they're 2 great fighters.
The main event is what I alluded to earlier. I've predicted one thing, but my head is telling me something completely different. If this goes to the ground, I think that Usman wrestles his way to another title defence. Don't get me wrong, we've seen that Masvidal can handle himself on the ground before, but Usman is an absolute beast that will smother you and not give you a moment's rest. However, we've also seen how lethal Masvidal can be standing up, with Darren Till and Ben Askren both staring at the lights come the end of their fights. So Usman really could easily get cracked, as he left himself open on the occasion in the fight with Colby Covington. I've gone with my heart on this one, as I'd love to see Jorge Masvidal wearing the welterweight championship around his waist, so that's my pick. Dan, what's the score with you here?
Yeah, again, I saw Masvidal on a few fights now, and he's a monster in the octagon. I definitely wouldn't want to come up against him. And although he kind of got that belt from Dana White, it wasn't a proper one. It's not a title belt. And also the fact that he's just come up on the UFC 4 as a cover star, I think that means that the UFC really believe in him as well. So I'd really like to see him take this one away.
So, after all of that, let us know your thoughts on the UFC reveal trailer in the comments below. And let us know what you think will happen tonight at UFC 251. Thanks for watching, and we hope you all stay safe and enjoy the fights tonight. So it's goodbye from me, goodbye, and it's goodbye from Dan.
Goodbye.